So we'll start with the working group introductions. I guess we could start with Curtis. So he can brief us on his background and introduce himself.
Sure thing. Good morning. So as you know, I'm Curtis Butler. I've lived in Darien since 2013 with my wife Arlene and two daughters, Charlotte and Claire. I think one of the reasons I was asked to join this discussion is our eldest daughter, Charlotte, who is almost 17, believe it or not, has cerebral palsy and is non-ambulatory, so she's been wheelchair bound her entire life. But she also is an adrenaline junkie. So we get her out as much as we can, skiing, water skiing, sledding. When we were in New York City and at our home in Darien, swing all the time. So yeah, we love what we see when we get kids like Charlotte moving and get them out in nature. So I'm happy to contribute any way I can.
Thanks, Curtis. We appreciate it. You're in a unique position to do that.
Should we do a quick
I'm Patty Baumgartner. We've done this for the ones that been on already, but Patty Baumgartner, I've been in Darien for going on 23 years, and I'm been on the Parks and Rec Committee for 14 and a half. I've been on the RTM for 14 and a half years and have been on the Parks and Rec Committee for a long time. And I am excited to be on this working group with you all, especially since we had the ARPA money, so we don't have to do fundraising, so we can move forward with these 3 playgrounds, Cherry Lawn, McGuan, and Baker, to get them to the next stage after about 18 to 20 years. Thank you.
I'm Susan Daly. I've lived in Darien since 2004. I've been on the commission for almost, I guess, 15 years, longest serving member. I did the Playground by the Sound at Wheat Beach, so kind of a little bit of experience doing that. But I'm happy to be on this committee to see what we can do for the other playgrounds in town.
I'm Kathy Laura Petty, and I'm on the Parks and Rec Commission. Have been on the commission for about 3 years. I've been in town for about 15 years. And I apologize for the barking dog. The garbage man came earlier. But I'm really excited to be on the playground committee. I think it's a wonderful resource in town, and I'm excited to how we can get it to be used by even more people in town, new people as well as existing residents, as well as your daughter and other kids in town who would love to get outside.
Devin, do you want to go? Devin or Ruth, can you come off mic?
Sure. Hi. My name is Devin Skian. I believe it says McBride on here. It's my maiden name. We've been in town for 3 years. We were in row 8 for 7. Ruth sort of brought me on a couple weeks ago saying that they were looking for some local parents from each elementary school to be, part of the playground program. My kids are 4th, 2nd, and pre-K. So we are still avid users of all the playgrounds. I would like to say that my 5-year-old is very vocal about going to all the playgrounds as much as possible. We're big Cherry Lawners, and as we call Baker Park, Dinosaur Playground. Still absolutely loving to go there, but I think my older kids have grown out of that one a little bit, so she's always pulling for it. So yeah, I guess I have your live attendees, so we've got a lot of insight onto what they love about playgrounds. So I hope I can help.
And I'll jump in after that. I'm Ruth Zakaria. I'm an occupational therapist, and I have about 20 years of experience working in pediatrics. So I hope to be able to contribute some of my developmental milestones and knowledge of kids to this group. I am, like Devin said, I have 2 kids that were very actively involved in the community. I've lived in Darien for about 5 years, and I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I was assigned to help with the Baker Park. So we're very excited to work together and try to get that park up and going, more so for some of the older kids, because I've done a little bit of research and realizing it's right now catered more towards the little guys. So hopefully we can bring some new ideas and get that up and going.
Pam, you can't get through? Oh, nothing, huh? I guess, Devin, the only other, since we're going to move on to the review of the playgrounds, did you have any preference in terms of what committee, or, because we've kind of divvied up all the different parks to kind of, you guys can do the market research with your kids, give us input.
I think Ruth had said did I want to join her at Baker?
Baker, okay. Was there, you also mentioned you did some Cherry Lawn too, right? Or
we're just there constantly, whatever sport, with 3 kids in sports in town, and dogs and all of that, we're there quite often.
yeah, no, I was thinking that since you are spending a lot of time there, even if you're not officially on the committee, I just want you to make sure that you input, because you do have such a great range of ages there. And if you're a heavy user, you could tell us about what's going on at the park faster than anybody else. So I'd appreciate that. Also, since Curtis has to jump off at 9:15, I believe, can we, if you don't mind sharing some of your thoughts on the parks that are being targeted for renovation change?
Happy to do it. So we lived in the city, New York City, for a long time, and then moved out to the suburbs. And some of the observations, we just see things differently, right? We notice stairways that we wouldn't have noticed before, right? We notice how difficult it is to get in and out of places. But specifically to the playgrounds and parks, I think 2 things are always welcome. Number one is to see a kind of special needs friendly swing. And there's a company that makes them of various sizes. We always recommend, the really big ones that can accommodate larger kids. You'll see them sometimes when you drive by a playground. They're these big red or blue, almost rubber looking platform kind of swings, like big chairs, but they're more horizontal. It's called Gen Swing. It's a really good company. We've always had them at our homes, and we actually got one installed at Ox Ridge when Charlotte was there. And so that's always a big deal, and it's even popular among the typical kids. They just think, oh, this is interesting and fun and big. But it's a really big deal for families with kids that have difficulties being on a regular swing. The other is the surfaces I would think about. One of the traditional, and frankly one of my historically favorite, because I'm a gardener, would be like wood chips or something like that. But that is not very wheelchair friendly, and that's something we discovered at Ox Ridge. So I couldn't actually get on the sidewalk or the lawn to the swing because it would just get stuck in the dirt. So I know other places around have those kind of rubberized surfaces with padding underneath, which is great for all kids for fall, but it's also super conducive towards either a stroller or a wheelchair. Whereas the more natural versions, which would be my natural inclination, really don't work for that at all. And there's frankly a lot more upkeep with those. So I think some of those more more revolutionary surfaces I think are quite helpful with that. And then for playgrounds, in general, yeah.
No, I was just going to say, we are looking at Pour and Play. Pam's been examining that for a while and talking it up. And I know Susan used a portion of that for the playground on the, and I went over and looked at what they did in New Canaan at Mead Park. And so we'll definitely explore that. Are there 1 or 2 parks in other areas of Connecticut that you find are really ADA compliant, or given your choice that if it was closer you'd go there?
That's a great question. So the place we go most often is Cove Island in Stamford, off season, right? Because they charge you like $5,000 a day just to take a walk in the summer. But the reason of it is it's flat open and there are paved walkways So we can take a really nice long walk along the water, something we can't do at the beach, right? And I'm not suggesting anyone should change that. I'm just saying we can't do that. What we do love about Weed Beach is that we wheel Charlotte in, and she can sit under cover at the picnic tables that, under the roof. And we have lunch there 50 times during the summer. So that's really nice. But generally speaking, the new Highland Park has a nice walkway. So we can do a full, perimeter a couple of times, which is nice. Again, just to get out, and the key is there's good handicap parking. Not that the town should be orienting everything towards this community, because it's a relatively small percentage, but it is nice. You pull in there and you see the blue signs right there, right by the path. It's really welcoming. So that's always something, that you look forward to. So, when considering playgrounds, if there's a way, if you're planning some sort of pathway, that it's, not be something that gets, muddy, or if it's just a plain old dirt pathway, is not going to be conducive towards wheelchairs, and frankly, even most strollers for the little kids. And I'm not, I was one of the people, Patty knows, hoping we weren't going to put a lot of hardscape at Highland Park. But to the extent that they, the extent that they did put it in has proven to be relatively helpful.
I was, Curtis, when you were talking about the paths, I don't know if you know, but we're looking at redoing and expanding the paths at Weed Beach, and you brought that up. And we did want to do a lot more of those surfaces that are ADA and easier it's not just for kids with wheelchairs, but it's, older people that are aging in place in Darien. I mean, I don't think it's a very small, I think it could be more effective, to be honest with you. So that's one of the challenges for those type of surfaces, and even with pour and play, since we did it at Weed Beach, the playground, is it does get more costly and the environmental impacts are higher. But I think that we should keep what you're saying in mind, because, we do want those spaces for, everybody to use, and it's not as limited as people think. The impacts could be far ranging. So your input is very appreciated, So
yeah, we were working with a landscape architect when we were looking at doing some work on our old house in Stephen Mather, and he talked about all these more environmentally friendly hard surfaces that are porous, so the water gets through, but also retain that rigid structure, so you can. And your point is valid about all chairs or walkers, and I'm thinking really, like, even those little umbrella strollers, they do not do well in sand or in dirt, right? So they're much better on some sort of hard surface. But yeah, that would be, the community that, let's say, I'm representing here today, they do a lot of the crazy stuff, like the spinning stuff at the playgrounds. It tends to be the more muted activities. But again, the swing in the park we went to in New York City, the Gen swing was the most popular swing at the park. And we had to just, when someone would show up who needed that swing, you had to rely on your neighbors to take their typical kids off. But there's never an issue of them being underused, taking up a spot.
I think, can you hear me now, everybody?
Yes.
Excellent. Curtis, on the gem swing, I think the one limitation that I understand is that you need a lot of space. Like Cherry Lawn probably could give you that space, and maybe Baker has the larger swing right now too. So maybe Baker and did you notice, in your opinion, that the space was, it needed a lot of space for that gem swing?
I wouldn't think so. It was the swing, runs on the same kind of line as a normal swing. So
Okay.
we had, I can send you a picture. Our swing set at home was 2 regular swings, or, one kind of, I can't even remember what they're called anymore. The little kids love them. But, some funky swing, a regular swing, and then Charlotte's Gen swing next to it, all in a typical swing set.
Okay.
So they run along the same path. Yeah, they're not a lot wider. There may be some kinds that you're thinking of that have a kind of like 360 rotation. This is one I'm just thinking it's number one, the structure is conducive to up to bigger children, even adults, able to sit back and their weight is distributed so they're not going to fall off. And it has belts, right? So they stay in, like a harness almost, so they stay in. But it still works along that same kind of, single line path. So I wouldn't say it takes up extra space.
Okay.
It's they're a lot longer, right? I mean, a regular swing is just a strip of rubber. These are big, almost like a lying down chair, but they're fantastic, and it's a
Cool.
reputable company if you just want to check it out. And again, I'm happy to reply to this email with pictures from our home swing. You can see Charlotte smile from ear to ear.
Yeah, please send that.
Thank you, Curtis.
Sure.
Is it Jen, Jen? Jen Swing?
Double N.
Double N? Thank you. So
Curtis,
helpful.
Curtis, this is
And,
so helpful. This is so helpful. Do you ever use the McGuan Park? Because that has an ADA sort of surface, as I call it. So it's somewhat older.
Yeah, we haven't used the playground. We go to McGuan. We were just there on the weekend for the opening of Darien Little League, which is the most incredible thing I've ever seen in a small town. It's like the entire town had a uniform on. But Charlotte's in Challenger baseball, so we go to McGuan for that, which is incredible. Thank you, Darien, for supporting Challenger baseball. But no, we haven't used the playgrounds. Again, for us, it was really awesome to have a swing at home. And Charlotte's so busy now, it's less important for her. But getting her out on the walks, I mean, during the winter, it didn't matter how cold it was or blustery. We went to Cove Island 2-3 times a week just to get out and walk. And the folks at Ox Ridge might be helpful if you want to look into the Gen Swing, because they did install one. Luke's very familiar with it.
Great.
Curtis,
Thank
did
you.
they fix the surface at Oxridge?
As I recall, they did, because I can't remember if they fixed it everywhere. I think they just may have created a pathway to the swing, because the first time Charlotte literally got dug into the ground.
Right.
So again, that's life. We
Luke did that.
just roll with it.
I'm sure Luke probably fixed it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Since we have Curtis here, can we report on McGuan? Because that seems to be the park that we need to focus on because of surfacing issues. And I would like to get some of the feedback from that park from our members. Is that okay, Curtis? And then you get to hear what we're coming up with and and if you have any input specifically on McGuan. It sounds like it's limited except for that recent visit. I'd welcome it.
No, we
And
go
Curtis,
there
just-
again for baseball all the time. What I noticed is, we just have to figure out how to get her around, because it's pretty complicated there, right? There's sections where you're on a pathway and the stairs go up to the concession, like, oh my God, I'm trapped. I have to turn around and go somewhere else. But in terms of access from handicap parking up to the ball field, not an issue. There's walkways.
How about the playground, getting from the parking lot to, how there's that, the parking spaces right next to the playground? How's that?
Yeah, that's where we always park. So Challenger baseball usually plays at the field right above the playground, directly above it. And actually, when Claire, our youngest, was little, she loved that playground. So Charlotte would be on the field and Claire would be on the playground. So yeah, we had good experience there.
Okay, does anybody else have feedback about McGuan so far? I know we have.
I would say, to recap for the folks that don't know, they have a softer surface at McGuan. It's not the wood chips. It is like a rubbery surface, and it's worked for years, but now it's pulling up. And so we're concerned about tripping and safety issues. So that's one of the reasons, if we're going to be going in and redoing the whole thing, we definitely are looking at, right, Pam, more of a flat pour and play surface than a separated tile that can continue to pull up.
Well, I think we need to look at the pros and cons, right? So they're both ADA, which is great. Believe it or not, the tiled rubber surface that we have currently is more expensive than the poured and play. The poured and play surface was the first surface they used at McGuan, and somehow it didn't work. So I just was reading on the notes through the years, and they put the poured and play in, and maybe a year or two later, it was all lifting or separating the surface. So they went back after the manufacturer, but I guess the warranty ran out. So they had to go back to the town to ask the town for an additional $40,000 to put the tiles in. So
Yikes.
yes. So we really need to look at the pros and cons between, I mean, we have poured surface at Weed Beach. It looks beautiful still, even through the elements of everything. So.
Right.
And it sounds like it could be a manufacturing issue as well, meaning that I'm sure there are lots of companies doing this.
There is.
How long ago was that, Pam? When the first pour and play went in? Do you recall?
It was many years ago. That was before my time.
That was like 2004, I believe, they put the tiles in.
Yeah. It was brand new when I started pretty much the commission-ish.
Right.
So if the tiles went in 2004, the pour and play went in prior to that and then got yanked out 2 years later.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, but I've seen beautiful surfaces of poured and play. I was just very, I actually was surprised that it was less expensive than the tile, I'll tell you the truth. So I'd like to really research that a little bit more, but either or, there are things we can do to have poured and play, the poured and play surface, even with, pathways of poured and play, and not if it became a financial issue, you wouldn't have to do the entire surface, but as long, like Curtis said, making sure the pathway from the parking lot to elements that, special needs can use, they need to be able to get from point A to point B. So.
Yeah, I would have to say, so access is the most important. I'll just give you a tiny anecdote. We went to 1020 Post as a family for the first time in 2 years. And the restaurant right next to 1020, I don't know, it changes every 3 months, but they put tables outside on the sidewalk, and there was literally no way to get a wheelchair up, because the one spot that had like a depression for a wheelchair was blocked by tables. So we had to go up to the road and then back around. It was ridiculous. Like, no one's thinking about this. And to the point, Susan, that you made, it's not Charlotte, it's all the people who go there who are elderly, right? And can't really easily get up over that 6-inch curb. So yeah, you always want to know that your community is thinking about access.
That's an interesting point for planning and zoning too, Curtis. I mean, I know you're close with 1020, the owners, and they love having your family in Charlotte and everybody there. I've loved watching that over the years. But yeah, that's an example of the next door restaurant not even thinking about it. We're thrilled planning and zoning is allowing outdoor activity to continue to occur, but they really have to think about those things. I'm going to give that feedback to Steve Alvani. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Great. Going back to the surface, I think there might be an issue there with drainage, Pam, because that tile is used all over. The reason that was, when we put that in, that's the tile they use in all the New York City playgrounds, and they're obviously well loved and well used too. And I think just hearing what you just said about the previous pour and play, if you look at where all that water settles, it's going to be right by the playground. That's the low point of that whole property. So I think if we do go with whatever surfacing we go for, we need to make sure the contractor figures out a way to make sure that, because that's what happens when you have water and you have settling and then it freezes and all this stuff, and it'll damage it quickly. But the tile itself was awesome when it was working, because if we had an issue with one tile, we just replace it. It's like a carpet tile when you have it in your house. We have a stain, just fix it, you're done. So it's like you don't have to change wreck the whole thing. But with the pour and play, if there is a problem, you're basically looking at tearing everything up very quickly, and it's hard to repair it. So,
I definitely don't think it was a drainage problem though, because I could see the pictures that were taken. I think it was very much a manufacturing issue. Yeah.
Well, hopefully, whoever if we do pour and play, will alleviate that. Besides the surfacing, we had talked about for McGuan about expanding the park potentially. The playground, I should say, not the park itself. So I'd like to get people's thoughts on that. I mean, it seems like it serves a huge group of people, especially when the games come in and, siblings are on the playground and family. What are people's thoughts on that? Having a bigger playground. Of course, now we're looking at more money when I say that, right? Sorry.
Well, interestingly enough, the footprint is not that big to expand. And we've recently installed or planted trees around the surface because it's a one park that was super hot. People were telling me many complaints about the fact that there was no shade there. So not that we can't move the trees because they're still very young. But I've looked at that. There's definitely a little bit of space to expand, but not a whole lot.
We do remember the super hot.
Yeah.
We've installed 6 trees. So that should take care of that.
My concern is that
It'll take a while because they're small, but it's a long term. Yeah, it was good to do long term. It's not an immediate fix, but it was definitely, you responded to that need, Pam. Thank you.
I guess my concern is the new people moving into those apartments and more people that might say, well, we're going to take a break from shopping and eating and let's, go to the playground. I just think that there's going to be more volume, and if that's the only park we have the equipment that's really good for ADA, I get a little nervous about not having enough real estate for everyone to use. So.
How about coming up on the right side how much room is there on the right side when you're coming up there? If we were to, you have trees and then you have a little extension, a little separation of something else there. And then I know there's neighbors that are further back with that fence, but I have to go back by and count it out distance.
You can expand on the left and the right, and you can actually expand a little bit on the far backside.
I'd be careful about expanding on the left because that baseball field is right there. And that's where the kids that are a little bit bigger play, because my son played there for years. So I do remember home runs going over that fence. So if I would say not go left, I would say go right. That's just my feedback. If we could do it.
We looked at it as a commission, Pam. Don't you remember that space closer to West Avenue, as you go that way, there's a little room there. I know there are houses there, so we have to be right, obviously thinking about those people too. Mm-hmm. But I think that we're not just here to replace existing, we're here to think about the future. And I think all of us need to think about what the future looks like in Darien with all these changes and with all the people moving in. We want people to come out and use the facilities, and we want to have that. So if we have
the best person to analyze that is the playground manufacturer, whoever we choose, or even if there's multiple people that we want to give opportunities to, they will go down and look at the footprint. We would give them the scope of the work, saying that we want to consider some expansion. So they'll come back with a plan.
I think we should think about it. I mean, and that part doesn't have to be all ADA, but I feel like we should just move it, give it more space, more airspace, more opportunities for kids to interact with different equipment. I don't think that's a bad idea.
Susan, how down
Go ahead.
I was just going to say you have a swing set, right? You have a swing set separately. So I could see us doing swing sets on the side. Thank you, Curtis.
Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Really helpful. Okay. Really helpful. Susan, just back to that point, you know how you built it and you've got the swing sets kind of separated from the climb and play area. So that's an example where we could consider doing the swing sets over there, and then you have more area for additional playground area. I agree, Pam. I think a manufacturer's
you're talking about playground by the sound, right? Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
Basically what happened with that was that we did the original playground, and when we went back to, when we were talking to Darien Foundation, they said to us, we want you to bring in more stuff for older kids. And so that money came in later, which is part of the reason it wasn't really in the original plan. That was added in later across the boat, what was used to be the boat ramp, right? At Weed Beach, the asphalt that goes into the water, that was the boat ramp. I don't know if you know that. And so then we put the swings on the other side, because that was the only real estate left for us to do that. So that was kind of a good mistake, I guess, or, you know, something that came about because we had additional funding.
But
I did-
learning from that, from what you just said, and somebody else said it earlier, Ruth or someone said, I'd like to see some things for older kids too, right? So that might be a great place because there's so many different ages that play at McGuan. You know, they're playing from little all the way up. They have the Challenger League. It's boys, it's girls, and then it's siblings hanging out, getting those great French fries at the snack bar while their brothers or sisters are playing. So I think that could be really an interesting area to expand into with a swing set, if it makes sense.
Yeah, because we have, I guess the way the monies work is we did put a certain budget number for each park, right, Pam? And with the idea
Yes.
that the surfacing. So if possible, maybe we should see, you know, talk to the playground planner. Even if we don't use them, they'll give us some ideas. It's like, you know, working with a designer, getting some ideas, you know, pre-design ideas before we start. I'd like to see that happen, especially with that space. Does anybody
Can
have any?
Can I
Okay.
jump in? Yeah,
Yeah, please.
I spent some time, I work in Greenwich, and I spent some time at Bruce Park the other day, and I was looking at what a diverse age group that was there. I feel like in Darien, a lot of times we see the 5 and under because a lot of our parks are not, you know, I know my daughter likes to go to the Henley playground because it has the zip line and like the bigger climbing things, but the town parks don't have that. And I noticed that when I was at Bruce Park, I think it's called Bruce Park. There was just this huge climbing mountain thing that like the 18-month-olds were on, the 12-year-old kids were on. They were all sharing the same thing. And I think that's something, if we don't have a lot of space, let's think about some equipment that can be utilized for the different ages. Because I do agree, like my kids love to go to the playgrounds, and like it's always great to get them out, and you know the backyard gets stale after a while. But they also get bored very quickly. And so I feel like if we can get creative in the type of equipment we bring in, you know, I think we can see that we can meet the different ages just by picking something that's a little more diverse.
Yep, net climbers are really popular. But again, space is an issue with those two, to have both, you know, a playscape and a net climber. So you'll find when we get to the manufacturer's part, or the, you know, playground equipment representatives, and I'm going to go through a list of what I've discovered in the last couple of weeks. But they'll bring it to your attention that whether you can have multiple or only one in whatever space that we have, that's the only space they can work with. And then they'll give this committee alternatives to what they can use, which is going to be really fun to see.
Okay, let's just go to another park, just because I know, you know, I have that thing about our meetings. So let's go to Baker real quick, because that's that might be quicker, and then Carrie Lawn, if we need to continue at another meeting, we can. Ruth, did you have any thoughts on Baker or Devin while we're, you know, thinking about?
I was there yesterday, ironically.
Uh-huh.
Ruth, I know you've done a little more research, but I'll just, even from yesterday, and I'm obviously new to all of this, but talking, you know, it sounds like we're looking at a lot of the ADA thing. I think, you know, that park is missing that right now. There's no trails, absolutely nothing, just grass. I'm out of the stroller phase, but have been there for years with strollers. You definitely, I think, have to do, I don't know if you can though, put in trails from the parking lot, because you're just kind of rough grass and terrain all the way over. Also, I don't know, are you limited to the space that they have now, or is there room for expansion there? I don't really know how that works. It's pretty
There is
small.
room for expansion.
But it's within budget. Like we have to factor that in. Like we want to fix what's our, you know, that existing area, but it's really dependent on our budget ultimately. But Baker can.
Could come forward quite a bit. Obviously, you have the neighbors right there and the street to your left. But again, I think it's really, I would say that playground is kind of 5 and under for the most part. I know my older ones, they love to go there in the winter to go sleigh riding. But I think, you know, if you are looking for something to improve and make that more encompassing, you're probably looking at some equipment for larger kids. And I know Ruth kind of already had some thoughts on that. We were texting back and forth.
But that unit, Devin, that's there is only, well, it's a 5 to 12-year-old playground playscape. We don't have any apparatus there that's for 18 to 5 years old. The only ones we have, yeah, that's a 5 to 12-year-old.
Doesn't it?
I also have really large children. I don't know.
Everybody does in Darien.
Yeah, because some of the things on that playground are very challenging, just like
Right,
at
the jumps. I would agree. Right,
Yeah.
you're right. Maybe it just seems like it's a younger scenario. Maybe my kids are, looking for more of the zip line and the climbing rope and things like that. I mean, now knowing this, I'm gonna ask for their input very much so, because I mean, all we ever want to do is go back to the Royal Playground. I'm like, you were just at school all day. Why?
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. Because I think if you take a really good look at Cherry Lawn Park, the 18 to 5 years old, big difference between the 5 to 12. 5 to 12 is much more challenging. A lot of things low to the ground on the 18 to 5 years old. So, I think you're right. You're when you look at Baker, it's just a small space. So it makes it feel that way.
I think that it is a little bit visual.
Yeah.
One thing that I would.
What your kids like at Royal? What do they want to? What do they go back to at Royal when they say, oh, we just want to go back? What are their favorite things?
Zip line. And it's funny because they do have the larger playground there, and then there is the kindergarten one that's kind of off to the right behind by the gardens. And that's definitely where my younger one tends to go. Barking dogs. But the zip line is huge. They did install this year, and I'm mixed on this because it's kind of dangerous. The Gaga ball, like circle situation. I don't know if you want to do something like that at one of the playgrounds because it does get a little out of control. I think, or because you can't control what balls they're using and they're basically kicking them at each other. But I do know that is very popular with older children.
And one more thing I would say, I know Pam, you were saying that the equipment is the dinosaurs, the equipment itself is for 5 to 12, but I think the disconnect is that when you spend time there, they're actually the little guys who are using it. So the people who are there are these little guys, and like the nannies are sitting there and you're watching these little ones that aren't really, they do the slide because it's not that big, but a lot of them aren't using the other half of that equipment because they can't. Like even those circle things that are those monkey bars, they're too big for my 5-year-old. So it's like we have a like the equipment, I agree that it's maybe built for the older kids, but they're not the ones using it. And the ones that are using right now are the little ones. Like I run daily around there, and so I get to see different times of the day. And it's always under the age of 5. I've never seen a kid over the age of 5 there. And the other thing is it's a very dark, like, because there's a lot of trees, which is great for shade. But it's one of those things too, I think we have to keep in mind when we think about, I was thinking about the sidewalks and just the ability to get a wheelchair into that space. It's a very musty type feeling. So too, like thinking about the equipment and like what would work well in that space. Because I know like my kids love the zip line. They love these climbing things. But again, I don't know what would do well, like mold wise or wetness, slippery, things like that, because I don't think it gets a lot of sunlight there. So I don't know what type of equipment would be appropriate. But I do think that the age is not being used in that. It's not a 5 to 12 park from the data that I've been seeing.
That's good. That's what we're looking for. End user data in a park like Baker, where it's a pocket park and it feels like it's a lot of people coming from the neighborhood walking. Or I've always seen, even when my kids were little, when they were really little, that's where I went. And then and then Cherylon has always been our park. I have a question for all of you with little ones and middle ones. Do you because we talked about this on a meeting earlier, it might be where we end up having, one of these parks really just be geared more to a younger group, or as a mom with multiple kids, is the ideal thing to have all of our parks have something for a variety of ages. I would like feedback on that. Sarah, too.
Sorry, yeah, I just want to jump on because I think Ruth and Devin have really hit a lot of things that I also have thought about when my kids don't go to Royal, and we go to Royal all the time. Love it. And we use when, especially during the summer when school's not in session, we prefer to go there over Cherry Lawn. I don't know why, it's just a good flow. I also, because there's so much open space, so we can bring our scooters, and it just feels, I feel less, because I have different ages, I feel less like, oh, now we're in the little section. Oh, now we got to go to the big section. Okay, everyone follow me. Like, I can't keep eyes on all of them, but for some reason at Royal, it feels a little, I feel less worried. Like, oh, okay, I can see you, but there's just something about it. And the climbing thing, I absolutely agree. The rope thing, if we can put that somewhere. Baker, I've spent one time there, and it is depressing. Like, it is such a depressing playground. And Ruth, again, hit the nail on the head. I'm like, oh yeah, it is really dark. So while we complain about some places being too hot, yeah, it's just, there's something about it. It just feels like, and this is I have no idea who planned it and who put it together. And I know everything has a lot of thought behind it. So I don't want to insult anyone who put the time, energy, and blood, sweat, and tears into it. But yeah, it just feels like it was like an afterthought.
It's the trees there. It's the trees.
Yeah,
And
it's just something. There's just, the whole thing just kind of feels like, oh, let's just like plop up this play structure here. I don't know. So, and it doesn't, the only time I was there, my oldest was maybe 2.5, and he could not do half of the stuff on there. Like, he's also short, he's not big. So I couldn't just sit on the bench and be like, yeah, have at it. And so I was thinking, since we all know that every park cannot be everything to everyone, you just can't, you have to have just an infinite amount of space to do that. But I was thinking then maybe we need to think outside the box for Baker then, since it does have a decent amount of space. Maybe that's the one that you do the structures that we can't fit at McGuan, or, maybe it is the more just different. Maybe it's the bigger, maybe it is just the climbing apparatus and a few other random like surprises almost. Because I think, like Ruth said, if it's pieces that are not just a climbing thing, not just a slide, not just your swing, which all the parks have, then it's kind of like, oh, it's something special. Or it just feels less, oh, you have to be this age, or you kind of aged out of it. I don't know. I just feel like, I know is the swing set still going there, Pamela? We got the money to put that swing set there, right? Okay. Right. Swings are always great. Who doesn't love a swing? I love swinging. So yeah, I don't know. I just feel like, yeah, Baker, I have all my friends go to Hindley, all of them at the school. And so a lot of them could go to Baker, and none of them go to it. They all hate Baker, and they couldn't walk to it. They don't go.
I can't explain why. My kids want to go.
It's just,
but I think it's because it's depressing. I'm like,
it's depressing.
it's also quiet. It's a different park. Pam, just to go back, you had talked about at one point putting that track there. Remember you were talking about that? Is it a bike? Was it a biking thing? It's a kind of an interesting track idea that you
I love it. It's called a pump track.
Explain it to the group maybe. And
it wouldn't work at Baker, but it's a pump track, and it's for obviously kids that like their skateboarding and their scooters and their bikes, and it basically it's portable too. So you can put it on flat surface and then take it away in the winter. But it is super fun.
so maybe that's
it's just hills, and the kids, doing on a pump track. So you can look it up. It's pretty cool, but you need a really big open space for that.
we do.
Well,
Okay.
You know where that could fit someday? That could fit to Edgerton property, Pam, if we ever do something there. Where the senior center came down? That could be a cool place to put that.
Mm-hmm. So to Sarah's point, I really agree with Sarah. And again, I think these are ideas that we need to bring to attention to the people that we can't just get one guy in to design it. They're not going to want that. They're going to want an opportunity to display their best work, what they can give back to our group. If we narrow down to 3 companies and say, look, this is what we have at each park. This is the space at each park. This is what we're kind of thinking at each park. Give me your best design. and then they're going to present hoping they're going to get the job.
So the question, I think Ruth, touched on this, like that it's a very shady, dark spot, and we should think about what works there. Another idea might be to make Baker kind of the more natural park. Does that make sense? Because natural materials, they're not there's more, it's not as slick if it gets mold, gets that algae or whatever you call it, that green stuff that gets on things when there's not enough light. I mean, when there's shade. Yeah, just something like maybe that's the space we do something more naturalistic to blend more. Like, why fight it if that's what we got there? We're not cutting those trees down because that's not happening in this town at any time. Why don't we work with what we have and work with nature? I think that's a place for us to kind of innovate and think about. And I think, it'll attract a different type of user that might want to get back to nature and they don't like the color or whatever. I'm willing. I think that's just a thought just off the top of my head that,
Pam, can you talk about Tierra had some kind of swing set like that was very natural for all of her kids climbing around? Was that you guys who said Tierra, or was it somebody else?
Yeah, it was me. Yeah, so the guy, his name is Fred, and it's Environmental Designs, and he's done a lot around the area, and I can't explain it, but like they're just really natural, and they probably would do really well in that space because it's all wood, there's no color, and yeah, but again, he would have to see the space and then he would give you the idea. It's not cheap, but it's all flexible. He builds it, so it's not here's your coming off the manufacturing line, like this is the piece and this is how it fits. So it's definitely customizable, which is kind of nice. Yeah, so it's Environmental Designs. You can see his website. It's not great, but you get the idea. I don't know if anyone.
Residential? Is he more residential?
He does residential. He does commercial. Yeah, again, his website's not great. He's small. He's not Playcore, but I don't think there's a lot of people like him out there, at least not in the area locally. But yeah, you'll get a sense, Pamela. I think I know New Canaan Nature Center has a couple of his pieces, and then there's is it St. Paul's across the street in New Canaan? St. Paul. There's a big church right there. Anyway, I think they've got one, and he's got one that's really cool that they call it the Nest, and it literally looks like a bird's nest, and it's made out of it's so cool, and the kids love it, and you just, I don't know, you feel like you're in this cocoon. It's different than being in like the standard, like, oh, I'm in a box, whatever. I mean, everyone has those in their backyard, right? So what's fun about that? But the Nest is just different. But he does all different things. So it is something to think about. Or he could do one piece. Like, he's not going to be like the big companies, like, that's going to say, I want it all or nothing. He'll give you one piece if you pay for it, so that I think is also kind of like add little elements here and there. But yeah, so Tierra had her backyard. She did it in her backyard.
Great idea. And let's if anybody wants to work on that, I know when I was in London, they have very similar, that same vibe and the same very natural, like the Nest. It's definitely out there. I think you just need to search for it, Pam. If you could figure out from your colleagues if there's somebody that does it on a very large scale, or even this company. We have about 10 minutes left, so I don't want to we're not going to finish this agenda for obvious reasons at this point. Do we want to just hit on Cherry Lawn a little bit before we kind of end today? It's obviously needs more than 10 minutes, but I think that that's going to be the one that takes the most time because there's a much more space that we're trying to cover, I think. And it's also, to be honest with you, I think it's the most highly used playground in our town. So it deserves a lot of time. So do you want to start on that, Patty?
For next time? Do you want to just bump it to next time and spend a little bit more time exploring these two parks that we're talking about? And then we could make the next meeting much more focused on Cherry Lawn, or we can just talk about feedback now.
I mean, do people have a lot more to add to those two parks right now off the top of their heads? I mean, I think, we've hit on a lot of the issues. I think now we have to just go deeper on some of them, like really look at, going back to McGuan, looking at expansion, looking at what we can do in terms of surfacing, for Baker, you know, that's the natural thing that we're looking at, right? And then I think Pam had something on the agenda too for her company feedback from her members. Is that a better time to use now? Do you need more than 10
Sure.
minutes, Pam?
No, I don't need more than 10 minutes. I will just let you know that. Go ahead.
Go ahead. That's okay to do that then instead
Sure.
of Cherry. Okay.
Sure. So I put out a blast to my colleagues throughout the state with Connecticut Recreation and Parks Association, as many of us do when we have questions on all sorts of different levels. And I asked the question whether or not they had recently in the last 5 years replaced a playground, and if so, who did they use and would they hire them again? And I got, I didn't get back as much feedback as I thought I would, and I certainly did hear from some of the playground companies because they're also on this serve list. So of course, I heard back from one of the reps that we've used here in Darien, I've used in my previous jobs, that he said, well, Game Time I hear is very good to use. So, but I did hear from some, and I did get, one that was in particular that many people said they would use over and over again, which was John Hollerbach, which is Miracle Equipment. I've used him in my past as well. He's great to work with. I got a lot of feedback on him, so I'd keep him in the list. I got Emmy O'Brien and Sons, which Darien has Emmy O'Brien. Matter of fact, that's who built Weed Beach, is Emmy O'Brien and Sons. And Game Time, like I said, that came back regularly. And then there was Compan, which Compan is, we do have pieces in Cherry Lawn of their stuff. I only heard back from a couple people of them. I'm not in particular, I don't know. It's an interesting line that they use. Some people absolutely love them. We have a lot of their pieces in the smaller playground, toddler playground at Cherry Lawn. The two new pieces that Susan and I had picked out that's Game Time. But if you want to go and look at Cherry Lawn, that Compan is some of the other pieces. I'm just not a huge.
Pam, can you differentiate? Because I know the two new pieces that you said are from Game Time. Those are the two ones. They've got green covers on top. They're
Yes.
obviously new because they're cleaner. What are the ones from? Can you spell the name of the company? Compan?
Yeah, Kompan.
Okay. Can you
Yep.
tell me a few of the examples of those pieces of equipment?
Well, I think what the two pieces we took out were Compan.
Yeah, they were.
And replaced them with Game Time. I believe that if you're staring at the park before entering it, at the toddler area, the playscape to the far left, I believe, is Compan.
Compan.
So yeah, I mean, they all have their different flair.
Patty, they're the water
Can you remind
feature.
me the two pieces that were taken out and replaced that were Compan? What were they?
Also,
Do you remember what they were? Were they the horsies, or can you remember?
no, they were like this similar structure, but for smaller kids. Like they were very
Okay.
much. It had a little slide. The thing about Compan, we use them too at Weed Beach. They use a certain type of material, and it didn't wear as well as I thought it could. I think, Pam, I think they showed their age very quickly because of the coloring. And I think it's like, I don't know if this is true, but it's like a compressed like board almost, and with some kind of sheathing on it. And it just, once it wears, it shows what's under it, and it just didn't age as well, I thought, personally.
Okay.
But it's
Good feedback.
too, and when we did it for Playground by the Sound, we wanted a water feature. They had a structure that accommodated that water feature. So it's just kind of, you got to figure out what amenity you're trying to offer and who's offering it. So that's why.
Right.
So I think it's a good start to say, if we talk to Miracle, Emmy O'Brien and Sons, and Game Time, we're not obligated to choose any of them. But if we want to give them the opportunity to show us their best work and what they think would be the best that they could do for that space, that's really exciting. It takes all the pressure off us, and all we do is look at the plans and see what kind of exciting things they can put in there.
Pam, that's a great idea. The only thing is we've only talked about 2 of the parks, so I wouldn't want them to jump and start doing stuff for Terry Lawn, for instance.
Not right now. No, not right now. Down the road when we're ready.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind hearing from them, just big picture, especially for me, McGuan, because I'm really worried about getting that done quickly to ensure the safety of that surfacing. I think that's the park that's going to go first, so I wouldn't mind doing that. For Baker, they could do that, but I think we're going to end up with something more naturalistic there. So if they can accommodate that, they can go for it. But I'm not sure I want to have what they're doing if the same colorful structures there. I mean, but
They all have different lines. They all have different lines. So some are more, they have an athletic line, they have a music line, they have a net climber line, they have a natural line. So they're all those companies are staying competitive.
Okay, well, I mean, if it's okay, maybe we have them start putting some ideas together for the parks we talked about today, because we have a better idea of who the users are, and things like that. And because we want to move, especially on McGuan. But Terry,
If we're going to meet in 3 weeks, I certainly could most likely they can put plans together for the next meeting for those 2 parks.
Right, Patty, not for Cherry Lawn yet, I think, because we don't know exactly what we want.
I agree, and that's a double playground, that's 2. So that's a project of its own. I agree with you, Susan. To get I know you've been saying this, Pam, for the last 2 meetings, we could get this done by having them come in, and we were kind of wanting to get feedback first. And I think everybody on this group will continue to get feedback, and I would encourage you, when you're at the playground, ask questions. I've been stopping in and asking all the parents and nannies at all different times of the day at Cherry Lawn, what would they like to see, what works, what doesn't, etc. So Sarah and I and the rest of us, anybody who's there, can continue to do that for Cherry Lawn. But I would say, in terms of moving forward, I know that McGuan, it felt like our committee was making McGuan the first priority because of the surface and because we do know those apartments are going to be coming in. Would you all agree with that? Okay. And then Pam, is there a benefit having companies come in and look at 2 at a time versus just Baker? What's your thought?
Sure. No, I think that they're going to love the opportunity. And if they're here, why not get the footprint of both?
Okay, great. And then if we like what they're doing, that's then their pitch to try and get the bigger event at Cherry Lawn down the line.
Yeah, nothing's set in stone. So if you don't like what they put on paper, all that can be changed.
Yeah. Pam, when you set up the meetings with the playground companies, I know they like to come out. If there are any people that are on the different committees and they're available, could you invite them to come and talk to the playground reps? Because I think that would be very helpful, because in theory they have the on-the-ground knowledge about who the users are. So I'd like to see that happen. Did you hear what I just said, Pam?
Yeah, is that okay, Pam? Will they be open to that?
If the playground representative comes out and wants to look at the space, it would be great to have the committee members also, if available, come to those meetings. If we can make it convenient for them, it'd be obviously better too. Because
what I thought was that what I think would be very helpful to this group is that if I could invite one of them to this meeting to talk about, like to Ruth's point, the net climber, right? All the different types of, and Sarah with the naturalistic one, they can speak to some of their elements. I'm going to ask them not to sell. I just want to talk about the different variety of things that they have and what's the trending thing.
Okay, I'm happy to have that too.
That's great.
And it's important that someone, if we can get, if they usually come out to the place to look at it, to do a quick look, and they're going to measure and do all this stuff. I'd like, if possible, not only you, but someone else on the committee to go and be a part of that meeting so that they're kind of in the process.
Sure.
Because I think that they'll get more out of it, and then they could report back what then the onus isn't on you to report back to us too about what some of the thoughts were. So I think it's a good way.
Okay. If there's a priority, would you rather be doing that one in person, or would you rather have people present, somebody coming in and presenting to the group what's trending?
I mean, we could do both. There's no reason why. It's just that when we do Pam has a playground meeting with somebody, I'd like, if someone's available that's on that committee, they should go. It's a given.
Sure.
But the spending thing is helpful. I'll do that too. But I just think we have an hour, and I don't want to, I don't want to lose committee time if, we can't get there. Do you know what I mean? So we got to make sure that we can get what we need done in an hour, because we're only meeting every 3 weeks. It's a challenge for people that are working and busy at other, with their kids. So we're at 9:48, and I don't want to like kick everybody out, but I think we need to, close this meeting. I always encourage everybody, we are on a group email. All our group, we can interface like suggestions. If everybody found more information about the natural playgrounds, we could put it on that and discuss it at our next meeting. But I think it's too challenging to go beyond what we think is our allotted time for everybody. Is that okay, Pam?
Yep, I just want to can I add one thing quickly? Just in my experience, and I know Susan, you have experience with this as well, but in my experience with the reps that come, if we're going to give 3 reps the opportunity to come out, they want to come out and measure the site. There really isn't going to be a meeting taking place, right? So I really think it's more valuable to have one of them at least present to the group about the different varieties that each playground company has and what things that we should be looking for that might be more trending than others or new different things.
Why don't I'll leave it up to you who you decide to let do that. Like talk to the companies, if whoever has the most far-ranging amenities that you think that we need to know about, has good feedback from your group and has great experiences, pick one, because I just think that we can't, let's start there. If we
We'll
think
give them
we
20 minutes.
Go to the next guy.
Would it be game time? Like if you had to pick somebody right now, would it be game time?
I already talked to game time in the sense of, listen, have you dealt with this particular type of proposal where towns would come to you and say, we have these 2 parks, give us the plans, and then this committee is going to give us your latest, greatest. He said, absolutely. In some towns, Greenwich just uses game time for everything. So they don't do any of that type of thing. We don't want to do that. We want to have choices.
Yeah.
Right. I know that Game Time did New Canaan's Mead, or at least a large part of it. So that might seem to be the right person out of the 3 you mentioned, because it doesn't sound like we want to do Compan to come in and present. What do you think as a presentation? And as you said, they'll talk to the naturalists and have them come out.
Let's start with that, Pam. That sounds good. Go ahead and we'll look at it at the next meeting, or hopefully they can come at our next meeting. Thank you guys so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And keep on talking to people. Have a great day.
Can we just confirm the next date, the next time that we're meeting?
It's in 3. Okay, sure. April 28th. And Pam, do you already have a date for us, or?
Yeah, it's May. Let's see. It's May 1, 2, 3. May 19th.
Yes. So 5
And I
months.
will send a list of all our scheduled meetings to you, all of you, the scheduled meetings that we sent to the town clerk, as well as a list of committee members with Devin's name added.
Okay. And we're good with 8:45, guys? Yes? I think we're set.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Let's
Devin,
do that.
thank you for joining us. Good to see you.
Thank you, guys. Happy
Great day,
New
guys.
Great. Thanks, Ruth. Thanks, Sarah.
Year.
Great meeting, Pam and Susan. Really productive. Thank you.
Bye-bye.